There's something unsettling about driving alone at night. Maybe it's the silence, the endless stretch of road, or the way the darkness swallows everything beyond your headlights. You feel alone, until you start to wonder if you really are. I used to love night drives. They were peaceful, a time to think. But that was before I picked up a passenger I should have never stopped for. Now, I never drive after midnight. It was past 2 a.m. when I left my friend's house on the outskirts of town. The highway was empty, nothing but open road and occasional flickers of distant tail lights. My phone's battery was dead, my radio was acting up, and I had a solid 40-minute drive ahead of me. That's when I saw her. A woman standing by the side of the road, barefoot, dressed in a pale blue dress that clung to her like damp fabric. Her long black hair hung over her face, obscuring her features. I wasn't the type to pick up hitchhikers, but something about her felt wrong. I told myself I'd just slow down, see if she needed help. As I pulled up beside her, she turned her head, just enough for me to glimpse her face. Her eyes were too wide, too dark. And she was smiling. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember her getting in. One moment she was outside, and the next, she was in the passenger seat, hands neatly folded in her lap. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was too even, too rehearsed. Like someone mimicking human speech. "Where are you headed?" I asked, forcing casualness. She didn't answer right away. Just stared ahead, as if watching something I couldn't see. "Home," she finally whispered. I swallowed. "Where's home?" A long pause. Then, "Just drive." The air inside the car grew heavy. The farther I drove, the less familiar the road seemed. The signs, the exits, none of them looked right. My dashboard clock was frozen at 2:13 a.m. And no matter how far I drove, my gas gauge never moved. I glanced at her. She was still smiling. I gripped the wheel tighter. I wasn't taking her home. She was taking me somewhere else. Static crackled through my broken radio. Then, a voice. "Missing for 3 nights. Last seen near Hollow Bend Highway." The signal wavered, then came back. "Authorities urge caution. If seen, do not approach." "She is not." The radio cut out. My breath hitched. Hollow Bend Highway. That was the road I was on. I looked at her again. She was staring at me now, head tilted, her grin wider than before. Something was wrong with her teeth. They were too sharp. Too many. "Who are you?" I whispered. Her expression didn't change, but she finally spoke. "You already know." The car engine sputtered. The headlights dimmed. And then, the road ended. Not in a dead end. Not in an intersection. It just stopped. Beyond it, nothing but darkness. A void. The woman unbuckled her seatbelt. And slowly, she turned toward me. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up in my car at sunrise, parked on the side of the road. My gas tank was full. My phone was fully charged. And the passenger seat was empty. I checked the news when I got home. A woman matching her description had disappeared 20 years ago. Never found. I don't drive alone at night anymore. And if I ever see a woman standing by the road again, I won't stop. Neither should you. For weeks after that night, I tried to convince myself it hadn't happened. That it was just exhaustion, a hallucination, a waking nightmare. But I knew better. Because she left something behind. The morning after, as I stepped into my car, I noticed the passenger seatbelt was still buckled. My fingers trembled as I unfastened it, but as soon as I did, a strange chill ran through me, like something unseen had just been released. Then there was the smell. A faint scent of damp earth and decaying roses. Lingering no matter how much I aired out the car. But the worst part, the thing that truly convinced me I hadn't imagined her, was the handprint. A single, perfect print on the inside of the passenger window. Not smudged, not faded. It was crisp, as though freshly pressed against the glass. And no matter how many times I wiped it away, it always came back. Every morning, without fail. I started sleeping with the lights on. At first, it was just paranoia. Then, the nightmares began. I'd dream I was still on that endless road. My car rolling forward despite my foot slamming the brakes. The woman sat beside me, her face shifting, stretching, her mouth curling into a grin too wide for a human face. And then I'd wake up, always at 2:13 a.m. Then, the waking hallucinations started. I'd catch glimpses of movement in my rearview mirror while driving, but when I turned to check, the back seat was empty. At home, I'd hear faint tapping on my bedroom window, even though I lived on the second floor. And sometimes, just as I was falling asleep, I'd hear a voice right by my ear. Keep driving. I couldn't live like this. I did everything I could think of, blessed the car, burned sage, even took it to a scrapyard. Thinking maybe destroying it would end whatever had latched onto me. It didn't. The nightmares got worse. The whispering became constant. I stopped sleeping. Then, one night, as I sat in my car, exhausted and desperate, the radio crackled to life. Come back, the voice whispered. The GPS on my phone lit up on its own. A route appeared, leading back to that same stretch of highway. I didn't remember starting the car. But suddenly, I was driving. The clock on the dashboard blinked, 2:13 a.m. No matter how much I drove, the road stretched endlessly ahead, no turns, no exits. And then I saw her. Standing in the distance, waiting. This time, I didn't stop. I slammed the gas pedal, racing toward her, determined to end it. But just as I reached her, she stepped forward. And I swerved. The car spun out of control. Tires screeched. The world blurred. Then, silence. They found my car on the side of the road the next morning. Engine off. Keys in the ignition. But I was gone. No footprints. No signs of struggle. Just an open passenger door, swinging gently in the wind. And on the inside of the window, a single, perfect handprint. If you ever drive alone at night and see a woman standing by the road, don't stop. Because if you do, you might never leave the road again. People tell ghost stories all the time, vanishing hitchhikers, shadowy figures on lonely roads. I used to think they were just stories. Now, I know better. Because I'm still here. Not dead. Not alive. Somewhere in between. I don't know how long it's been since that night. Time doesn't move the same way here. My phone is dead, my radio plays only static, and my gas tank never empties. I drive. And drive, but the road never changes. And I'm not alone. I see others sometimes. Their headlights flicker in the distance before vanishing like mirages. Some are stuck like me. Forever trapped on this road that doesn't exist. Others weren't as lucky. Their cars sit abandoned on the shoulder, doors open, engines cold. The woman is still with me. Sometimes. She sits in the passenger seat, smiling. Sometimes, she watches from the rearview mirror, her black eyes locked on mine. And sometimes, I hear her whispering from the vents. Keep driving. I've tried everything to escape. I've turned the wheel, hit the brakes, even closed my eyes and hoped to wake up. But the car keeps moving, the road stretching endlessly ahead. Once. I pulled over and got out. The air was thick, heavy, like stepping into a world half-formed. There was no wind, no stars, no sound. Just an empty road that stretched into nothingness. And when I turned back, the driver's side door was open. And someone was sitting in my seat. I ran back, but before I could reach the car, it took off down the road, without me. I screamed. Chased after it, but it was gone. And then I felt something behind me. Cold breath on my neck. Fingers brushing my shoulder. I didn't turn around. I knew who it was. The next thing I remember, I was back behind the wheel. Driving. As if I had never left. I don't know how I ended up here, but I know I'm not the first. And I won't be the last. Sometimes. I see headlights in my rearview mirror, real cars, real people. Drivers who still have a chance to turn back. I try to warn them. I flash my lights, honk my horn. But they never see me. And then, without fail, the woman appears ahead of them. Standing by the road, waiting. Some speed past her, their taillights fading into the distance. Those ones are safe. But the ones who stop. The ones who let her in. They join me on this road. Their cars appear beside mine, their faces frozen in the same horror I once felt. Then, one by one, they disappear. And I keep driving. I think I figured out how this started. There was another driver before me. The first one who picked her up. I hear him sometimes, his voice crackling through the radio static. Help me. His voice is weak, distant, like it's coming from another world. I ask him questions, but he never answers. Only those two words, over and over. Help me. And then, sometimes. Late at night, I see his car on the side of the road. A rusted old sedan, its hood covered in dust, its windows shattered. The driver's seat is empty. But the passenger seat. The seatbelt is still fastened. I think someone escaped once. I was driving, if you can even call it that, when I saw something strange. A flicker of movement. A figure on the shoulder, running. Not the woman. A man. He was barefoot, his clothes torn, his face sunken and pale. He was sprinting, his breath ragged, his eyes wild with terror. And he was looking back. At her. She was behind him, gliding silently along the pavement, her long black hair flowing unnaturally. He wasn't running fast enough. I wanted to help him. I wanted to stop the car, reach out, tell him to get in. But I couldn't. The wheel wouldn't turn. My foot wouldn't move from the gas pedal. All I could do was watch as she caught up to him, wrapping her fingers around his shoulder. And then, he was gone. No scream. No struggle. Just, gone. Like he had never been there at all. I don't know how to break free. But I've learned the rules. Rule number 1, never stop. No matter what you see. No matter what you hear. Rule number 2, don't look at her reflection. The rearview mirror lies. Rule number 3, ignore the voices. They sound like people you know. They're not. Rule number 4, keep your seatbelt on. I don't know why. But something tells me it matters. Rule number 5, if you ever see an exit, take it. I don't know how long I've been driving when I see it. An off-ramp. It shouldn't be there. The road has never changed before. The sign is rusted, unreadable. But I don't care. I yank the wheel and swerve onto the exit, tires screeching. For the first time in forever, the car obeys. I feel the shift immediately. The air is different. Lighter. And in my rearview mirror, I see her. Standing in the middle of the road. watching me leave. Her mouth opens, and though I can't hear her, I know what she's saying. You'll be back. I wake up in my bed. My phone is on the nightstand, fully charged. The time reads 7:32 a.m. It's over. I try to believe that. I try to go back to my life. But things are wrong. The house is just a little too quiet. My reflection lags in the mirror. My phone sometimes displays 2:13 a.m. Even in broad daylight. And in my car, the passenger seatbelt is always fastened. No matter how many times I unbuckle it. I don't drive at night anymore. I don't even take the highway. But sometimes, when I'm out late, I see her. Standing at the edge of the road. Waiting. And sometimes, I see someone else pull over. Rolling down their window. Smiling at her. I want to scream at them to drive away, to hit the gas and never look back. But they don't see me. Just like I never saw the ones who came before me. And as they let her in, I know one thing for certain. They won't be coming back. Neither did I. Not really. I've tried to move on. I tell myself it was just a dream, a hallucination, a trick of exhaustion. But the truth is, I can't shake the feeling that I never really left that road. It's in the little things. My reflection still lingers half a second too long in the mirror. When I turn off the lights at night, I hear faint tapping on my window, even though I live on the second floor. And my car. It isn't mine anymore. Oh, it looks the same. Same scratches, same coffee stain on the dashboard. But it feels different. The seatbelt in the passenger seat always buckles itself. The vents whisper when the engine is off. And every time I check the odometer, the mileage is higher. Someone is still driving it. Even when I'm not inside. The first time I heard the radio turn on by itself, I nearly crashed the car. I was driving to work. The morning sun burning away the night's unease, when the static crackled to life. At first, it was faint. Just white noise, the kind you hear when a station isn't tuned properly. Then, underneath the static, I heard it. A voice. Not hers. His. The man from the road. Help me. The same words I'd heard before. But this time, he said something else. She's still with you. The radio cut out. And in the rearview mirror, for just a split second, I saw her. In my back seat. Smiling. I started researching after that. I had to know what I was dealing with. I scoured news archives, police reports, urban legends, anything about vanishing hitchhikers or strange occurrences on Hollow Bend Highway. That's when I found something disturbing. A town. Or, rather, the memory of one. It used to be there, decades ago. A small, isolated town off the highway, with a population of less than 300. Then, one night, it was gone. Not abandoned. Not destroyed. Erased. No buildings. No roads leading to it. As if it had never existed at all. The only proof it was ever real. A handful of newspaper clippings and a few elderly people who vaguely remembered hearing about a town that used to be there. And one article, dated March 3, 1971, that sent a chill down my spine. Local woman found dead on roadside, hit and run suspect missing. The picture was old, grainy. But I knew that face. Long black hair. Hollow eyes. Her. I thought I was alone in this. I was wrong. After weeks of searching, I found someone else, another survivor. His name was Daniel, and he looked like he hadn't slept in years. Sunken eyes, jittery hands, always glancing over his shoulder. When I told him what had happened to me, he just nodded. She found you too. He told me his story. Same woman. Same road. But unlike me, he never took the exit. Instead, he tried something else. He drove backward. It's the only way, Daniel said. He claimed that if you ever find yourself trapped on the endless road, you have to put the car in reverse and drive backward, without stopping. Without looking at her, without hesitating. And if you do it right, you'll wake up in your bed. Like nothing ever happened. That's how he got out. Or so he thought. Because before I left, he gripped my wrist, his fingers ice cold. You can escape the road, he whispered. But you can't escape her. I didn't want to believe him. But I had to know if he was right. So one night, I did it. I got in my car. I took the highway. And, just as I feared, the exit was gone. She was waiting for me. Standing in the distance, smiling. I slammed the car into reverse and floored it. The road screamed beneath my tires. The world around me blurred. She started walking toward me. Then running. Then crawling. Her body twisted. Her arms bending at impossible angles as she scrambled toward the car, her face stretching into something not human. I kept going. Faster. The air grew heavy, my ears ringing. My vision darkened at the edges. She was almost at the hood now, her hands reaching, her mouth opening wider than a person's ever should. And then, darkness. I woke up in my bed. Morning light filtered through the blinds. My phone sat on the nightstand. Fully charged. It worked. I was free. Or so I thought. Until I got into my car that afternoon. And saw what was in the passenger seat. Not her. Something worse. A new seatbelt imprint pressed into the cushion. Someone else had been sitting there. Recently. And when I turned on the engine, the radio came alive with static. A new voice whispered through the speakers. Keep driving. It wasn't over. It was never over. I had escaped the road. But I had become something else. A carrier. A messenger. And I knew, deep down, I wasn't alone in this. Because somewhere out there, another driver would take the highway tonight. They'd see a woman standing by the roadside. They'd feel compelled to stop, even if they didn't know why. And once they let her in, they'd never leave the road again. Just like me. Just like all the others. And the worst part? I think I want to go back. The road calls to me. And one day soon, I know I'll answer.